In the quiet routine of everyday life, a single moment of rage can awaken an ancient evil that slowly erodes everything you hold dear, turning the ordinary into a nightmare that never quite explodes but drags on forever. John Thompson was a man in his mid-40s, living what most would call an average life in the suburbs of a mid-sized American city called Riverton. He worked as a project manager at Tech Solutions, a company that handled software for small businesses. His day started early, around 6:30 a.m., with a quick shower, a bowl of cereal, and a kiss goodbye to his wife Sarah before he headed out the door. Sarah was a teacher at the local elementary school, patient and kind. With long brown hair she often tied back in a ponytail. They had been married for 15 years, and while the spark had faded a bit into comfortable routine, they still shared quiet evenings watching TV or talking about their kids. Their children were the center of their world. Tim, the older one at 10 years old, was a quiet boy who loved building model cars and playing video games in his room after homework. He had John's dark hair and a habit of asking too many questions about how things worked. Lily, 7, was the opposite, bubbly and imaginative, always drawing pictures of fairies and unicorns with her crayons scattered across the kitchen table. She had Sarah's smile and a laugh that could fill the house on good days. The family lived in a 2-story house on Maple Street, with a small backyard where the kids played on a swing set that John had assembled himself one weekend, swearing under his breath at the confusing instructions. Work for John was steady but frustrating. The office was a gray building downtown, filled with cubicles and the constant hum of computers. His boss, Mr. Reynolds, was fair but demanding, always pushing for deadlines. John's colleague, Mike Harlan, was the source of most of his headaches. Mike was younger, in his 30s, ambitious and slick, with a way of smiling that never reached his eyes. He had a habit of stealing ideas, taking credit for reports John had written or tweaking plans just enough to present them as his own. It had been building for months. Little things like Mike interrupting in meetings or forgetting to include John in emails about project updates. One Tuesday morning in early fall, with the leaves just starting to turn yellow outside the office windows, it all came to a head. They were in the conference room for a weekly team meeting. The room smelled of stale coffee from the pot in the corner, and the fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead. John had spent the weekend perfecting a new software rollout plan, complete with timelines and cost breakdowns. He presented it confidently, flipping through slides on the projector. But when he finished, Mike leaned back in his chair, crossing his arms. "Interesting, John," Mike said in that smooth voice of his, "but honestly, it's flawed. The timeline is too aggressive and the costs don't add up. I think we should scrap it and go with something more realistic, like the adjustments I suggested last week." John felt his face heat up. The adjustments Mike mentioned were basically John's original ideas, repackaged. The room went silent as everyone looked between them. Mr. Reynolds nodded thoughtfully. "Mike has a point. Let's refine this." That was it. John slammed his notebook shut, standing up so fast his chair scraped loudly against the floor. "This is bullshit, Mike," he shouted, his voice echoing off the walls. "You've been writing my work for months, you thief." "I curse you for this. May you rot for betraying me like this." The words hung in the air. Curse. It was an old-fashioned thing to say, something from movies or books. But in that moment of rage, it felt right. Mike just stared, then let out a short laugh. "Whoa, easy there, John. It's just business. No need for drama." The meeting ended awkwardly with people shuffling out quickly. John grabbed his things and stormed to his cubicle, heart pounding. He sat there for the rest of the day, staring at his screen but not really working. By 5 p.m., he packed up and drove home, the traffic crawling as always, giving him time to stew. When he got home, the house smelled of spaghetti sauce simmering on the stove. Sarah was in the kitchen, stirring the pot while Lily colored at the table and Tim played a game on his tablet. "Rough day?" Sarah asked, seeing his face. John nodded, dropping his bag by the door. "Yeah, fought with Mike again. He's such an ass." He told her the story, leaving out the curse part. It sounded stupid now. Sarah listened, sympathetic, and said, "People like that get what's coming eventually. Don't let it ruin your evening." They ate dinner as a family, talking about school and weekend plans. Tim shared how he aced a math test, and Lily showed off her drawing of a princess. It was normal, comforting. After the kids went to bed, John and Sarah watched a sitcom rerun, her head on his shoulder. He felt better, the anger fading into the background. But that night, as John lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan spinning lazily, he couldn't shake a weird feeling. The house was quiet, too quiet maybe. Outside, a dog barked in the distance. He rolled over and closed his eyes, drifting off eventually. The next morning, everything seemed fine. John went to work and Mike was there, acting like nothing happened. But by afternoon, Mike complained of a headache and left early. John didn't think much of it. Life went on. Little did John know, Mike had a secret buried in his family history. Mike's grandfather had been a tantrik, a practitioner of ancient occult rituals from his Indian heritage, passed down quietly. Mike never believed in it much, but he wore a small silver amulet around his neck, a family heirloom said to ward off evil. The curse John had uttered, spoken in true betrayal, had stirred something. It was like flipping a switch on an old forgotten machine. That evening, as John helped Tim with homework, the lights in the house flickered once. "Probably the wind," Sarah said, glancing up. Outside it was calm. Lily paused her playing and said, "Daddy, who's that man outside the window?" John looked, but saw nothing, just the darkening yard. He shrugged it off. It was just a kid's imagination. The day ended like any other, with baths, bedtime stories, and lights out. But in the quiet hours after midnight, John woke to a soft whisper in the room. It sounded like wind through cracks, but almost like words. "Curse, you." He sat up, heart racing for a second, then lay back down. Must be a dream. Morning came and the routine started again. Breakfast, school drop-offs, work. Dull, predictable, but with a faint unease now lurking in the corners. As the week dragged on, small things piled up. The coffee machine at work sputtered and died when John used it. At home, Sarah found a cabinet door open that she swore she closed. Tim's model car fell off the shelf by itself. Lily kept talking about the shadow man in her dreams, describing him with dark clothes and a sad face. John laughed it away. "Kids and their stories," he told Sarah. But deep down, he remembered his curse. Was it coincidence? Mike called in sick the next day, then the day after. Rumors at work said he was in the hospital. Something about sudden illness, tests running. John felt a twinge of guilt, but pushed it aside. Life was too busy for superstitions. He focused on his projects, on family dinners, on mowing the lawn that weekend. Everything felt normal, yet off, like a picture slightly tilted on the wall. And so the days blurred together, the horror not crashing in but seeping slowly, like dampness in the walls of an old house. Life in the Thompson household trudged along, each day blending into the next like pages in a worn-out book. John woke up at 6:30 a.m., as always, to the sound of his phone alarm buzzing on the nightstand. The room was dim, the early fall light filtering through the curtains. He rubbed his eyes, feeling the weight of another workday ahead. Sarah was already up, making coffee in the kitchen, the smell drifting upstairs. Downstairs, Tim and Lily were eating cereal at the table, their spoons clinking against bowls. It was the same as every morning, boring, predictable, safe. But the unease from the past week lingered like a faint smell you couldn't place. John drove to Tech Solutions, navigating the familiar traffic of Riverton. The city was waking up, with joggers on the sidewalks and delivery trucks idling at stoplights. At the office, the news about Mike Harlan was the talk of the break room. "He's still in the hospital," said Linda, the receptionist, pouring coffee from the new machine. "They don't know what's wrong. Maybe an infection." John nodded, sipping his coffee, but didn't say much. He felt a pang of guilt about the curse he'd shouted in the meeting, but brushed it off. People got sick. It wasn't his fault. Back home, Sarah was having her own troubles. She noticed more odd things in the house. Every morning, the kitchen cabinets were open, just slightly, as if someone had peeked inside and left them ajar. She closed them firmly each night, double-checking, but found them open again by dawn. "Maybe I'm just tired," she muttered to herself, wiping down the counters. Teaching third graders was exhausting, and the new school year had her grading papers late into the evening. She didn't want to worry John, who was already stressed about work. Tim came home from school one day with a story. "My books fell off my desk in class," he told Sarah, tossing his backpack on the couch. "No one pushed them. They just fell." Sarah frowned but said, "Probably just a wobbly desk, honey." Tim shrugged, unconvinced, and went to his room to work on his model cars. His latest project, a red Mustang, was almost finished. but he noticed one of the wheels was missing. He searched under his bed, in the closet, everywhere, but it was gone. Lily, meanwhile, was quieter than usual. She sat at the kitchen table after school, drawing with her crayons. Sarah glanced at her latest picture and froze. It showed a stick-figure family, John, Sarah, Tim, and Lily, standing in front of their house. But in the corner was a tall, dark figure with no face, just a black scribble where the head should be. "Who's that, Lily?" Sarah asked, keeping her voice light. "The man who watches us," Lily said matter-of-factly, not looking up. "He's outside at night. Sometimes he's in my room." Sarah's stomach twisted. "Sweetie, that's just your imagination." "There's no man," Lily shook her head. "He's real. He says he knows Daddy." Sarah forced a smile, but when she tucked Lily into bed that night, she checked the windows twice. They were locked, the yard empty under the streetlights. Still, she couldn't shake the image of that drawing. That evening, John got a call from Alex Harlan, Mike's older brother. John hadn't seen Alex in years. Mike had mentioned him once or twice, saying he lived out of state. The call came while John was washing dishes, the kids already in bed. "John, it's Alex," the voice said, low and serious. "We need to talk about Mike." John dried his hands, stepping into the living room so Sarah wouldn't hear. "Yeah, I heard he's sick. What's going on?" Alex paused, then said, "It's not just sickness. Our family, we have a history. Our grandfather was a tantrik, someone who worked with spirits, old rituals. Mike never liked talking about it, but he carried an amulet for protection. When you cursed him, something woke up." "Something bad?" John laughed nervously. "Come on, Alex, you're saying my words made him sick? That's crazy." "It's not a joke," Alex snapped. "Grandpa bound a spirit to our family long ago to protect us. But a curse spoken in real anger can twist it. It's not Mike you should worry about, it's you and your family." John hung up, shaking his head. "Superstition," he muttered. He didn't believe in spirits or magic. He went to bed, telling Sarah it was just a weird call from Mike's brother. But that night, the house felt different. Around 2 a.m., John woke to a scratching sound, like nails on wood, coming from the hallway. He grabbed his phone, using its light to check. The hallway was empty, the sound gone. He checked on the kids. Tim was snoring, Lily curled up with her stuffed bunny. Nothing was wrong. He went back to bed, heart thumping, telling himself it was the house settling. The next morning, Sarah found a glass on the counter, cracked down the middle. She hadn't heard it break. Tim complained that his room felt cold, even with the heater on. Lily added another detail to her story. The man said he's mad because someone hurt him. John tried to focus at work, but the office felt oppressive. The lights flickered when he walked by, and his computer crashed twice, losing an hour's worth of work. He overheard co-workers whispering about Mike. "They say he's not getting better," one said. "Maybe it's some rare disease." By the weekend, the family's routine dragged on, but the small disturbances piled up. The TV turned on by itself at low volume, playing static. The dog, Rusty, barked at the basement door, refusing to go near it. Sarah found one of Lily's drawings folded neatly in the laundry basket, even though Lily hadn't been near the laundry room. John noticed his car keys were never where he left them, turning up in odd places like the bathroom sink. Sarah suggested they take a break, maybe go to the park. They packed a picnic and spent Saturday afternoon by the lake watching the kids run around. It felt good, normal, like the weirdness was just stress. But when they got home, the front door was slightly open. John was sure he'd locked it. Inside, everything was fine, no signs of a break-in, but the air felt heavy, like someone had just left the room. That night, John dreamed of Mike. In the dream, Mike stood in the office, his face pale, eyes dark. "You cursed me," he said, his voice echoing like it came from underwater. "Now it's your turn." John woke up sweating, his throat dry. He didn't tell Sarah. She was already worried enough. The days continued, each one a repeat of the last. Breakfast, school, work, dinner, bed. But the whispers, the shadows, the little things that weren't right, they kept coming. John told himself it was nothing. People didn't believe in curses anymore. It was just life, messy and tiring. Yet every time he closed his eyes, he felt watched. The Thompson family clung to their routine, as if the sameness of daily life could shield them from the growing unease. John woke each morning to the same alarm, the same gray light seeping through the bedroom curtains. He'd stumble downstairs where Sarah was already pouring coffee, her face tired from grading papers late into the night. Tim and Lily ate their cereal in silence, the clink of spoons against bowls a familiar soundtrack. But the house on Maple Street felt heavier now, like the air was thick with something unspoken. At Tech Solutions, the office buzzed with rumors about Mike Harlan. By midweek, word came that Mike had died in the hospital. Heart failure, Linda the receptionist said, shaking her head as she sorted mail. So sudden. He was young, too. John overheard this in the break room, his coffee cup pausing halfway to his mouth. A cold knot formed in his stomach. He remembered his curse, those angry words shouted in the heat of the moment. "May you rot," he'd said. Now Mike was gone. It was just a coincidence, he told himself, but the guilt gnawed at him like a toothache. John didn't tell Sarah about Mike's death right away. He drove home that evening, the radio playing some pop song he barely heard. The traffic was slow, as always, headlights glowing in the dusk. When he walked into the house, Sarah was chopping vegetables for dinner, the knife's rhythmic thud filling the kitchen. "You okay?" she asked, glancing up. He nodded, forcing a smile. "Just a long day." But the kids were acting strange. Tim, usually glued to his video games after homework, was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. "What's wrong, buddy?" John asked, ruffling his hair. "My room's cold again," Tim said quietly. "And my Mustang model." The wheel showed up. "It was on my pillow this morning," John frowned. "You probably found it and forgot," Tim shook his head. "I didn't. I looked everywhere. Lily was worse." She hadn't drawn anything new in days, which was odd for her. Instead, she clung to Sarah, refusing to go to her room alone. At bedtime, she whispered, "The man's mad." "Mommy, he says Daddy did something bad." Sarah hugged her tight, telling her it was just dreams, but her eyes met John's with a flicker of fear. That night, Sarah found scratches on Lily's arm, 3 thin red lines, like someone had dragged nails across her skin. "How'd this happen?" Sarah asked, her voice sharp. Lily shrugged, eyes wide. "I don't know. It was there when I woke up." Sarah showed John in the bathroom, where they cleaned the scratches with antiseptic. "Maybe she scratched herself in her sleep," John said, but his voice lacked conviction. Sarah didn't reply, just bandaged Lily's arm and tucked her in. The next day, John decided to dig deeper. He couldn't shake Alex's call about Mike's family and the tantrik stuff. Sitting at his desk during lunch, he searched online. He typed tantrik rituals and curses into his browser, feeling silly but desperate. The results were a mix of spooky stories and vague articles. One site described tantrics as people who used ancient rituals to control spirits, sometimes binding them to objects or families for protection or revenge. It mentioned how a curse spoken with true intent could wake a spirit, turning it against the cursor. John closed the tab, his hands cold. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, but the house kept proving him wrong. The next evening, while the family ate dinner, spaghetti again, because it was quick, there was a loud thump from upstairs. Everyone froze. "What was that?" Tim asked, his fork halfway to his mouth. "Probably just the wind," John said, but he stood and grabbed a flashlight from the kitchen drawer. He climbed the stairs, the wood creaking under his feet. The hallway was dark, the air chilly despite the thermostat being set to 70. He checked every room, Tim's, Lily's, the guest room. Nothing was out of place, but the thump echoed in his mind. When he came back down, Sarah was clearing the table, her movements quick, nervous. "Everything okay?" she asked. "Yeah," John lied. "Just the house settling. That night Sarah had a nightmare." She woke up gasping, clutching the sheets. "John, I saw him," she whispered. "Mike. He was standing at the foot of the bed, staring at me. His face was wrong, pale, like he was dead." John held her, his heart pounding. "It was just a dream," he said, but he didn't believe it anymore. He hadn't told her about Mike's death yet, and now he couldn't bring himself to. The next morning, Sarah called her sister Emily, who lived an hour away. Over coffee, while the kids watched cartoons, she said, "I think something's wrong with the house. Things keep happening. Cabinets opening, noises, Lily's scratches. I sound crazy, don't I?" Emily, practical as ever, said, "You're stressed. Maybe get the house checked for electrical issues or pests. And talk to John, he's been off lately." Sarah nodded, but when she hung up, she felt no better. She decided to call a priest just in case. Father Michael from their local church agreed to visit that weekend. "It's probably nothing supernatural," he said kindly, "but I'll bless the house if it helps you feel safe." Father Michael came on Saturday, a short man with gray hair and a calm smile. He walked through the house, sprinkling holy water and saying prayers. The kids watched, curious, while John stood awkwardly in the corner. "Anything else bothering you?" Father Michael asked. Sarah hesitated, then told him about Lily's drawings and the noises. He listened, nodding. "Sometimes children sense things adults don't, but let's not jump to conclusions. Keep praying, and call me if it gets worse." After he left, things seemed quiet for a day. John went to work. Sarah taught her classes. The kids did their homework. But on Sunday night, the power went out for 10 seconds. When it came back, the TV was on, showing static. John turned it off, but as he walked away, he heard a whisper from the speakers. "You cursed me." He froze, looking at Sarah. She'd heard it too. Her face was pale. "John, what's going on?" she asked. He finally told her about Mike's death and Alex's call. Sarah's eyes widened. "You think this is real? A curse?" "I don't know," John admitted. "But I'm scared." They agreed to find someone who knew about tantrik rituals. Sarah searched online and found a man named Mr. Harris, a local who claimed to study occult practices. "He's not a priest," his website said, "but he's helped families with unexplained problems." John called him, and Mr. Harris agreed to visit the next day. When Mr. Harris arrived, he was older than expected, with thinning hair and a worn leather bag. He walked through the house, pausing in each room. "There's a presence here," he said finally, sitting at the kitchen table. "It's tied to a curse. Someone in this house angered a spirit, and it's strong." John swallowed hard. "What do we do?" "A ritual," Mr. Harris said. "To call it out and send it away. But it's risky. If it fails, the spirit could get angrier." They didn't decide right away. John wanted to think it over. Life went on. Work, school, dishes, laundry. But the cracks in their normal life were growing. The dog refused to come inside at night. Tim's grades slipped because he couldn't sleep. Lily stopped talking about the man, but started wetting the bed, something she hadn't done in years. John lay awake at night, replaying the curse in his head. He felt like he was drowning in guilt, but the days dragged on, each one a slog through the same routine, now tainted by fear. The Thompson family's life on Maple Street dragged on, each day a heavy slog through routine, now laced with fear that clung like damp mold. John woke to his alarm at 6:30 a.m., the sound jarring in the quiet house. He lay still for a moment, listening for whispers or scratches, but heard only the faint hum of the refrigerator downstairs. Sarah was already in the kitchen, pouring coffee, her eyes shadowed from sleepless nights. Tim and Lily sat at the table, picking at their cereal, quieter than kids their age should be. The house felt like it was holding its breath, waiting. John drove to Tech Solutions, the commute as mind-numbing as ever. Same traffic lights, same cars crawling through Riverton streets. At the office, Mike's death still lingered in conversations. "Such a shame," a coworker muttered over lunch. He was fine one day, gone the next. John kept his head down, avoiding talk. The guilt from his curse was a constant ache now, like a bruise he couldn't stop pressing. He tried to focus on spreadsheets, but his thoughts kept drifting to Mr. Harris's warning about the spirit. Back home, Sarah was struggling. She'd found more oddities: a mirror in the hallway cracked overnight, a jagged line running through the glass. She hadn't heard it break. Tim came home from school saying his locker at school had jammed, and when it finally opened, his books were soaked, like they'd been left in the rain. Lily, meanwhile, refused to sleep in her room. "The man's there," she whispered to Sarah, clutching her stuffed bunny. "He says he's waiting for Daddy." Sarah called Mr. Harris again, her voice shaking. "We need to do the ritual," she said. "It's getting worse." John agreed when he got home, though he still half believed it was all in their heads. Mr. Harris arrived that evening, his leather bag heavier this time, clinking with objects inside. He was calm but serious, his thin hair plastered to his forehead from the drizzle outside. "This spirit is tied to your curse," Mr. Harris said, sitting at the kitchen table. The kids were with Sarah's sister Emily for the night, a rare break from the tension. "It's likely Mike's spirit, twisted by his family's tantrik past. We'll perform a ritual to call it out and bind it to an object, then destroy it." John nodded, his mouth dry. Sarah gripped his hand under the table. "What do we need to do?" she asked. "Stay in the circle," Mr. Harris said. "Don't break it, no matter what happens." They set up in the living room after dark. Mr. Harris drew a large circle on the hardwood floor with white chalk, muttering prayers under his breath. He placed 4 candles at the edges, north, south, east, west, and lit them, the flames flickering despite no breeze. In the center, he set a small clay pot, etched with symbols John didn't recognize. He sprinkled herbs inside it, dried leaves that smelled sharp and bitter. "This will hold the spirit," he explained. John and Sarah stood inside the circle, holding hands. Mr. Harris began chanting in a low, rhythmic voice, words in a language that sounded old, guttural. The air grew cold, the kind of cold that seeps into your bones. The candles flickered wildly, casting shadows that danced on the walls. John's heart pounded, but he told himself it was just nerves. Then the room shook. A deep rumble, like a truck passing outside, but the street was silent. The chandelier above swayed, its crystals clinking. Sarah gasped, squeezing John's hand. "Stay calm," Mr. Harris hissed, his voice steady but strained. A shadow appeared in the corner, tall and formless, darker than the dim room should allow. It pulsed, like it was breathing. "You cursed me," it whispered, the voice unmistakably Mike's but warped, as if spoken through static. John's stomach dropped. Sarah whimpered, her nails digging into his palm. Mr. Harris raised a small dagger, its blade etched with more symbols. He threw a handful of herbs toward the shadow and shouted, "By the power of the old rites, I command you to leave this house." The shadow surged forward, growing taller, its edges fraying like smoke. The candles went out, plunging the room into darkness except for the faint glow of streetlights through the window. Sarah screamed. John felt a pressure on his chest, like invisible hands pushing him down. He stumbled but stayed in the circle. Mr. Harris kept chanting, his voice rising, but the shadow laughed, a horrible grating sound. The clay pot in the center cracked, a loud snap that echoed. The shadow lunged at Mr. Harris, who fell to his knees, clutching his chest. "No," John yelled, stepping forward but stopping at the circle's edge. The shadow retreated, fading slightly, but the air was still heavy. Mr. Harris gasped, sweat beading on his forehead. "It's too strong," he croaked. "The curse is deep. We need a master tantrik, someone stronger." They broke the circle, helping Mr. Harris to the couch. He was pale but breathing. "I'm okay," he said weakly. "But you're in danger. That spirit wants you, John. It's tied to your anger." They called an ambulance for Mr. Harris, who insisted he didn't need it but went anyway. The hospital said it was a panic attack, nothing serious. John and Sarah sat up late, the kids still at Emily's. "What do we do now?" Sarah asked, her voice small. "I'll find someone else," John said. "Someone who can stop this." The next day, life resumed its dull march. John went to work, though he barely got anything done, his mind replaying the failed ritual. Sarah picked up the kids, who were quiet, sensing the tension. Tim asked why the house felt wrong. Lily just hugged her bunny tighter. Sarah found a new contact online, Guru Raj, a tantric master who lived 2 hours away. His website was simple, promising solutions for spiritual disturbances. John called him, explaining everything. Mike's death, the curse, the failed ritual. Guru Raj's voice was calm, accented. "I will come," he said, "but you must prepare. This spirit is angry, and it will fight." While they waited for Guru Raj, the house grew worse. The basement door creaked open at night, though it was locked. Sarah found a knife on the counter, standing upright, blade stuck in the wood. Tim woke up with a nosebleed, his pillow stained red. Lily started humming a strange tune, one she said the man taught her. John's guilt was unbearable now. He barely slept, his dreams filled with Mike's face, accusing him. Work was a blur, meetings, emails, coffee breaks, all meaningless. Sarah's teaching suffered. She forgot lesson plans, snapped at students. The kids stopped playing outside, the swing set untouched. The days dragged on, each one a repeat of fear and routine. Breakfast, schoolwork, dinner, bed. But the spirit was there in the cracks of their life, waiting to widen them. The days in the Thompson household blurred into a monotonous haze, each one echoing the last with a growing undercurrent of dread that made even the simplest tasks feel exhausting. John's alarm buzzed at 6:30 a.m., pulling him from a fitful sleep filled with shadows and accusing whispers. He stared at the ceiling for a minute, the weight of guilt pressing down like an invisible blanket. Downstairs, Sarah moved through the kitchen like a ghost. brewing coffee that neither of them really tasted anymore. Tim and Lily sat at the table, their bowls of cereal barely touched, eyes dull from interrupted nights. The house on Maple Street, once a cozy refuge, now felt like a cage, its walls closing in inch by inch. John commuted to Tech Solutions, the drive a numb ritual, same routes, same honking cars, same gray skyline of Riverton. At work, he went through the motions, answering emails, attending meetings, sipping lukewarm coffee in the break room. But his mind was elsewhere, replaying the failed ritual with Mr. Harris. The shadow's laughter echoed in his ears, and the guilt over Mike's death gnawed deeper. It's my fault, he thought during a quiet moment at his desk. One stupid curse, and now this. Co-workers noticed his distraction. His boss even asked if he was okay. John muttered something about family issues and pushed on. Home was no better. Sarah had taken a few days off from teaching, claiming a migraine, but really because she couldn't focus. She spent her time cleaning obsessively, wiping counters that were already spotless, as if order could ward off the chaos. But the disturbances escalated. One morning, she cut her finger on a shard of glass from a bulb that exploded in the lamp for no reason. Blood dripped onto the floor, and as she bandaged it, she swore she heard a soft chuckle from the empty room. The wound throbbed for days, refusing to heal properly, a constant reminder. Tim was hit harder. At school, he started seeing the shadow in the hallways, a fleeting darkness that made him jump. One afternoon, he tripped on the stairs at home, tumbling down half a flight before catching the railing. His arm twisted painfully, swelling up like a balloon. Sarah rushed him to the doctor, who x-rayed it and said it was a sprain. Must have been clumsy, the doctor joked. But Tim whispered to Sarah in the car. It pushed me. Mom, the man pushed me. Sarah's hands shook on the wheel, but she said nothing, just drove home in silence. Lily's changes were the most heartbreaking. She barely spoke now, her bubbly personality buried under fear. She hummed that eerie tune constantly, the one the man had taught her, a melody that sounded like an old, forgotten chant. One night, Sarah found her standing in the kitchen at 3 a.m., eyes glazed, staring at the basement door. He wants to talk to Daddy, Lily said in a voice not quite her own. Sarah scooped her up, heart racing, and locked them both in the bedroom until morning. John confessed everything to Sarah that evening, after the kids were in bed, or trying to be. They sat on the couch, the TV muted, showing some mindless show neither watched. The curse. It's destroying us, John said, his voice breaking. Mike's spirit, or whatever it is, it's because of me. I was so angry, Sarah. He stole my ideas, but it wasn't worth this. Sarah's eyes filled with tears, a mix of fear and anger. Why didn't you tell me sooner? We're falling apart, John. The kids. They're suffering. She pulled away when he tried to hug her, the fracture in their marriage widening like the cracks in the mirrors around the house. They pinned their hopes on Guru Raj, who arrived 2 days later. He was a short man in his 60s with a gray beard and traditional clothes, a white kurta and beads around his neck. He carried a wooden box filled with ritual items, incense, powders, small idols, and a curved dagger. This is no ordinary haunting, he said after walking the house, his eyes narrowing at certain corners. The spirit is vengeful, bound by the tantrik legacy of the one you cursed. It feeds on your guilt, John. We must perform a proper ritual. But first, you all must fast and pray. The family prepared as instructed. Guru Raj had them draw symbols on the doors with turmeric paste, burn incense that filled the house with a heavy, spicy smoke. The kids were scared but followed along, Lily clutching her bunny, Tim asking questions Guru Raj answered patiently. The spirit was meant to protect, he explained, but the curse twisted it. Now it seeks balance, revenge. Before the main ritual, the spirit struck again. That night, as they tried to sleep, John felt a presence. His body went rigid, like ice water poured through his veins. Suddenly he spoke, but it wasn't his voice. It was Mike's, harsh and mocking. You stole from me, John. Now I steal your family, Sarah screamed, shaking him. The kids ran in, terrified. Guru Raj, staying in the guest room, rushed over and sprinkled holy water, chanting quickly. The possession ended, leaving John gasping, red marks like fingerprints on his throat. It's testing us, Guru Raj said calmly. Tomorrow, at dawn, we end it. The night dragged on, sleepless and tense. John held Sarah, whispering apologies, but she was distant, the emotional toll showing in her weary eyes. The kids huddled together in one room. the house creaking with unseen movements. Morning came slowly. They gathered for the ritual, hope flickering like the incense flames. But the routine of fear continued. Breakfast skipped, school called off, work ignored. The spirit's presence was everywhere, in the cold spots, the flickering lights, the whispers that now said names. Tim. Lily. Sarah. John's remorse deepened, adding emotional layers to the horror. He realized his anger had not just summoned a spirit but cracked his family's foundation. The days were endless, a grind of waiting and worry, the danger feeling all too real in its slow, relentless advance. The Thompson family's ordeal reached its peak in the dim light of dawn, but even then, the resolution felt like just another step in the endless grind of their haunted routine. John hadn't slept at all, his eyes red-rimmed from watching shadows dance on the walls. Sarah moved mechanically, preparing the space as Guru Raj instructed, her hands trembling slightly as she arranged the items on the living room floor. Tim and Lily huddled together on the couch, wrapped in a blanket, their faces pale and drawn from the nights of terror. The house smelled of incense and fear, a thick mix that clung to everything. Guru Raj began the ritual precisely at sunrise, when the first rays filtered through the curtains, casting long shadows that seemed almost alive. He had set up an elaborate altar, small idols of ancient deities, bowls of holy water mixed with herbs, and a larger vessel, a brass urn etched with intricate symbols meant to trap the spirit. The family stood in a protective circle drawn with rice flour and turmeric, holding hands tightly. "Do not speak unless I say," Guru Raj warned, his voice steady but grave. "The spirit will try to break you," he started chanting, his words rising and falling in a hypnotic rhythm, invoking powers from old tantrik texts. The air grew heavy, charged like before a storm. The candles around the altar flickered, then burned brighter, flames stretching unnaturally tall. John felt a chill crawl up his spine, the same cold that had plagued them for weeks. The spirit manifested slowly at first, a whisper here, a gust of wind there. Then it surged, the room shaking violently. Books fell from shelves, pictures tilted on walls. The shadow coalesced in the center, taking form, a twisted version of Mike, his face contorted in rage, eyes glowing red like embers. "You cursed me," it roared, the voice booming through the house, rattling windows. "Your family pays the price," Lily cried out, burying her face in Sarah's side. Tim squeezed John's hand so hard it hurt. Sarah's lips moved in silent prayer, her face streaked with tears. John faced the apparition, his guilt boiling over into words. "I'm sorry, Mike," he shouted over the chaos. "I was wrong. Take me, not them." The spirit laughed, a sound like cracking bones. It lunged at the circle, testing the barriers. Sparks flew where it hit the invisible wall, like electricity arcing. Guru Raj didn't falter. He threw a handful of powder into the air, chanting louder. The powder ignited in midair, forming symbols that hung glowing before fading. The spirit recoiled, howling. Guru Raj raised the curved dagger, its blade catching the light. "By the ancient binds, I command you into the vessel," he intoned, slashing the air in precise patterns. The spirit twisted, trying to escape, but the urn began to glow, pulling at it like a magnet. Winds howled through the room, papers flying, the temperature dropping to freezing. Lily's tears fell onto the floor, and strangely where they hit, small steams rose, as if her innocence added power to the ritual. The spirit fought back, slamming into John. He felt it enter him again, a burning pain in his chest. His vision blurred, Mike's memories flashing, betrayal, anger, the tantrik amulet failing as the curse took hold. "You deserve this," the spirit hissed through John's mouth. Sarah screamed, "Fight it, John!" Guru Raj sprinkled more holy water, and with a wrenching effort, John pushed back, his love for his family an anchor. Finally, with a deafening shriek, the spirit was sucked into the urn. Guru Raj sealed it with a wax stamp bearing a sacred symbol, then smashed the dagger's hilt against it, cracking the vessel. A burst of light filled the room, then silence. The cold lifted, the shadows retreated. The house felt empty. "It's done," Guru Raj said, wiping sweat from his brow. "The spirit is banished, but curses leave scars. Be vigilant." The family collapsed in relief, hugging each other tightly. John sobbed, apologizing again and again. Sarah held him, her anger melting into forgiveness, the emotional bond reforming amid the wreckage. Tim and Lily smiled for the first time in weeks, the color returning to their faces. But life didn't snap back to normal. They quit their jobs, sold the house, and moved to a new town, starting over. John found work in a smaller office. Sarah homeschooled the kids for a while. The routine returned: breakfast, school, work, dinner. But now with therapy sessions and quiet nights where they talked about what happened, yet the horror lingered. Sometimes, in the quiet, John heard faint whispers. A cabinet might creak open. Lily drew one last picture of the man, but smiling now, as if at peace. The danger felt off, not gone, but subdued, a reminder that one angry word could unravel everything. In the end, their family was stronger, forged in the frenzy of supernatural terror. But the curse's shadow never fully lifted, a dull ache in their new life.